Hello everyone. Today we'll be looking at the Household Affordability Index, published by the Peter Maritzburg Economic Justice and Dignity Group. This is a monthly index which tracks the cost of a typical basket of household goods in South African cities, namely Johannesburg, Durban, Cape Town, Springbok, and Peter Maritzburg. And yes, so the data is mainly based on the following table. So this is the report for November 2024. So here's the table with the tracked food and the quantity and the given city, as well as an average and totals. So our analysis takes this particular table for as far back as we possibly can and aggregates this data to get a view of the long-term trend of, say, the average for some food prices as well as the averages for the total and the particular cities. Just a note on the data before we go to the visualizations. Looking at the report, it is specified that this particularly looks at low-income households, and in fact, there's a note that such families generally have about 7 members, which I found quite surprising. I found rather high, so the 7 might be a consequence of the report focusing more on lower-income households rather than South Africa in general. So you might find that higher income households have less members per household. And the methodology of the survey just uses, survey data collected from women in those households who are the people who are typically doing the shopping, and it allows for dynamic shopping, so comparison between brands and prices amongst different shops. So it is a very realistic way of shopping. That is how real people shop, substituting brands and substituting shops depending on specials and prices in any given month. So the reason I point this out is this report was brought to my attention by an article, and there they do refer to it as tracking the typical cost of a household food basket in different regions, and it might give the impression that we're talking about the average for everyone. Like I said, using particularly lower income households might skew the data a little bit in terms of a higher price because more people per household, and also there is a little bit of a differential between what, say, the lower income, middle income, and higher income households buy, although there are generally some basics that everybody buys. Okay, so let's have a look at the data. So this time the visualizations aren't very fancy, but mainly it's what we can get from the aggregated data. So firstly, we have a look at the locations. These are just to see the areas we're looking at. Then we have just a basic line graph. So here we're looking at items by city. So for instance, here we have white bread, and we can look at any other item that's tracked by city. So this is the price of white bread in Johannesburg and Maritzburg, Pietermaritzburg, and there, and we can go and select several cities to compare. So adding Cape Town to the mix, but we can only select one food item. So let's say beef here. So here we can select single food item, but we can multi-select cities and compare that way. The next tab has single city by item. So here we're able to select only a single city, but we can look into multiple food items. So here I've just selected Johannesburg, and for the food I've selected beef, eggs, and fish. I haven't selected that many items because there's quite a lot of items to choose from and it can clutter the graph, but you can play around with this. And just a note here, we have a sharp increase in the price of eggs relative to everything else. And this was in September, from September 2023 to October 2023. So I highlight this because this correlates with egg prices shooting up because of avian flu. So there's an article on that. And so after a bit, there was an article published on that after the egg prices in October jumped up quite a bit because of the avian flu. So it is quite nice to see that story showcased in the data. And okay, we can do a bunch of other things like, okay, this is why I only selected very few of them, because selecting everything just jumbles up the chart there. But let's say we want to compare bread. So brown bread, we want the price of brown bread and white bread. White bread, and we're seeing, look at that, white bread more expensive than brown bread. That's generally the case in Joburg. Let's see on average, definitely on average. Let's see in Cape Town there. So yeah, you can play around with that and compare a bunch of things. Now here we have a headline view, so totals of the total food basket cost by city. So here we're comparing Durban, Joburg, and Springs. If we want to look at the average, there it is rising. And if we want to compare the three metros, Cape Town, Durban, and Joburg, which was what was being looked at in the article, they pretty much follow each other quite closely, but Joburg in the end here going higher. And in the next tab, we just have rankings, so average price by food tracked. So which food do we spend the most amount of money on? Here we're seeing chicken portions, white bread, brown bread, maize meal, sugar beans. So that's for the year 2024 and the month of November. If we want to look at the whole year there, so we can see on average for the, for the whole year of 2024, what on average did we spend the most on a monthly basis? It was mainly white bread, chicken portions, and brown bread. And checking if that changed in 2023. frozen chicken portions and chicken portions. I think we might need a little bit of aggregation there. This might be the same thing, I believe. And what we spent the least on: salt, tea, curry powder, and apricot jam. These are basically seasonings, so you wouldn't expect to spend too much on these. And yes, so here, aggregating by month, we're trying to look at, are there any potential seasonal fluctuations? The one interesting thing I found here was oranges. So we see in January, February, March, high prices or increasing prices for oranges, and as it comes to the autumn winter season, when oranges are in season, we see lower average prices, and then going into September, October, we're going back up in orange prices. But a lot of these, I did not really see any meaningful or sharp changes in their average price over the year, so not much seasonal change there. And here we're looking at the quantities used, so this is just for reference, and to verify that consistent quantities were used from month to month, since this analysis spanned several years. So making sure that some of the quantities weren't adjusted upwards or downwards over the years. And lastly, we try and look at the price range over the time period. So trying to get a look at the variance of certain food prices. So this is for all regions, and we're seeing that our most expensive food here being brown bread, chicken portions, chicken livers being not very expensive, but we're seeing some variance in the price, serious variance there. Same with butternut, not an expensive item, but extreme variance in price. So I'd call it like a mid item. And we can just go through this and looking at which items have high variance, high price, or low price but high variance, and things of the like. And yeah, thank you. So this is more play around with the visualization and analyze and try to draw some conclusions. Yeah, thanks.